Survivor Heroes vs Villains, one of the best seasons of Survivor, with one of the best themes, with one of, if not the best casts ever amassed on Survivor. Except Candace being on the Heroes track. Hello everyone, Bandit here, and today we're going to take that beloved cast and just throw it into the fire, like Scoopin's face. This is going to be a video entirely recasting Survivor Heroes vs Villains with brand new goodies and baddies. However, there are a few rules. Firstly, this season will still be set as Season 20, meaning only contestants from the first 19 seasons can be cast. In synergy with the original cast, only people that made the merge in their original season can compete, and they still need to fit the theme, whether to be a hero or a villain. So, let's jump into it and start with the villain meals. This was a hard squad to make, as we're firstly losing the most iconic villain meals in Rob and Russell, plus there are a lot of good villainous meals. On the topic of iconic, firstly I decided to add Rob C to the mix, ironic considering he now hosts a podcast talking about Survivor. But even at this stage of the game, he was seen as such a memorable figure. He's the first person in Survivor history to utilise a purposeful pendulum strategy alongside Matthew, and was seen as the "you should have won" person in the Amazon.
I think Rob deserves my seat because I think he's proven to be an amazing strategist.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to echo Matt and say Rob, when it comes down to strategical gameplay and just general wealth of knowledge of the game, Rob has all that encompassed into one.
On All Stars, his return was lacking, but he still retained his fun personality, and one which made jabbing confessionals at people consistently. Plus, this type of fun, energetic personality is what is needed on a Survivor season that can be as game body as all these All-Star seasons. Swiftly following that, we have Sheen Powers from Panama, who was just an insane individual on his original season, beefing with Courtney, beefing with Danielle, beefing with Courtney again, beefing with Sari, and of course beefing with Courtney again. Shane was one of the main reasons Kasaya was so spectacularly dysfunctional and literally threatened to murder his castmates.
I'll drive up and I'll kill you in your little apartment, and I'll drive over to my club and that'll be it.
But Shane is a fun personality, accentuated by his clueless attitude and a natural addition to the Heroes 2.0. And if nothing else, this is revenge for him somehow not making a return in Cambodia. Next up is Ozzy, and I know he's more of a question mark, considering he had such a strong immunity run in his original season, Cook Islands, and winning challenges while your back is against the wall is a proven sign of being a hero. However, Ozzy is a to-the-T villain besides that. I mean, there's a 21-minute video talking about how entitled he is, and that should speak volumes. But we also have other villainous acts, like him throwing a challenge to get out Billy, making a fake idol for Jason to find, and he also had this weird final tribal message for Parvati.
I never in a million years thought that you could do that to me. You put a price on our friendship. You threw us away like garbage. You basically said, you know what, you're not quite worth this much money. Honestly, the hardest part for me was the fact that you took away 14 days that I could have spent with Amanda.
It's like this dude watched All Stars and assumed every season with returnees had to end with two lovers at the end. Now Ozzy is a meta pick for this season, like others, because he does feature in other seasons post-20. So while I obviously can't count his South Pacific or Game Changers into his resume, not that many would, his two opening games give him enough stock to join the cast, plus the villains need some much required challenge strength. Following that, I put fellow Season 13 and 16 player on the cast, and that is Penner. This is essentially me righting the wrong production made of putting Candace on the Heroes tribe, and I put Jonathan Penner on the dark side. Now there are a few things to note. Firstly, we have Jonathan's iconic flip away from the I-2-4 to join the other tribe, as he thought Adam had the idol. Secondly, we then have his other flip, causing the entire Rero tribe to be pagonged as he flipped to the I-2s and eliminated Nate. And constantly flipping really isn't seen as a positive trait. Plus, he was called many negative names during that season, and while I do feel it becomes a bit too personal at points,
you pissed everyone in this game off. It's vile to me. It makes me, I feel sick to my stomach. I think that he's a filthy, miserable rat.
Jonathan sucks at life.
It's gross. It makes me want to throw up. He is an obnoxious force.
Yeah, I was getting really annoyed at him.
Well, Jonathan, you're a rat because you betrayed everybody in this game.
I think all this paints Jonathan as the bad guy. We also know production has a soft spot for medevac players and likes to bring them back. Think of Penner, Russell, He Who Shall Not Be Named in Philippines, plus Caleb randomly being added to Game Changers despite never visiting a tribal. Finally, I wanted to synergize my cast with the original Heroes vs Villains by putting winners on it. However, unlike Season 20, which had 2 female villains and 2 male heroes, I put a female and male on each tribe to spice up the dynamics. This final villain comes in the form of Todd, the sly, sneaky man who I'm surprised we haven't seen return to the actual show. In China, he was renowned for his biting confessionals, blindsiding James with 2 idols, and completely destroying John Robert at his final tribal.
In my opinion, you organizing to blindside me, yeah, you blindsided me, okay, I'm out of the game, but I wasn't the biggest threat.
You started to strategically place ideas in people's heads, which is what I wanted my job to be. I had to get rid of my biggest strategic threat, who was you.
That was a good answer.
On top of this, he was also a strategic mastermind and was always within the majority. Overall, these reasons synergize with him being the villain. After this, I went with the heroines and began the list with the original female hero, Colleen. Now, Colleen hasn't played since Season 1, but still is talked about in the community to this day. She is known as America's sweetheart and was the last standing of the Pagong tribe, which was the original survivor tribe that got decimated.
My code name for the night is Bullseye.
I am otherwise known as Sitting Duck.
If those reasons don't work for you, then just remember Colleen somehow hasn't been back on Survivor for 20 plus years, so I just want to see her make a return. On top of this, I went with another old school player in Tina. Now, she was the first boot in All Stars. That's not great, but most of this was due to the anti-winner sentiment of that season that she couldn't prepare for. On the Australian Outback, she was seen as the complete opposite to Richard Hatch. She was a soft-spoken mum that played to get the quote-unquote good people to the end and eliminate the bad people that didn't deserve to be there, like Jerry and Amber. We even see this earlier in the season with the Mitchell blindside. We also see her in Blood vs. Water, where she continuously wins Redemption Island duels and even returns to the game after beating fierce competition like Hayden and Laura Moret. So she's clearly physical enough to be casted in spite of her age. Much like my Australian Survivor video, this next person is my quote-unquote wildcard pick, but they have the makings of a great hero, and that is Xian, originally from Survivor Thailand. Xian was a very clear underdog in her original season, being at the bottom of the Sukchai tribe and was the victim of a bad production twist. Following this on All Stars, she was in the minority with Lex and Kathy coming into the merge. Lost those allies, won a clutch immunity, which always helps in a narrative of being a hero, and thwarted the majority 6.
Stupid people. Stupid people. Let me just say that again. Stupid players.
So irrespective of her self-called she-devil antics, I wanted to add her to the heroes. The next pick is far later in Survivor's history, and that is Taj. Taj was a fun presence in Token Sheens, belonging to the minority group consisting of herself, Stephen and JT coming into the first merge vote. She has a lot of Cirie upside in being an individual clearly not accustomed with the outdoor life, but was adored by the public because she was so emotionally involved in so much of the game.
Might have been a little hard to hear. There's one line.
On top of this, we also have the fact she was literally willing to give up her game so that JT could win. If that's not heroic, I don't know what is. The final female hero comes in the form of Shambo Waters. An old pick, I know, but we saw on the original Heroes vs. Villains season that production was willing to cast Russell from season 19 on the following season, and Shambo makes for a good female hero. She had this perfect mix of unawareness, key examples.
So the mouthpiece is gone?
It is. You couldn't find it?
It's in the swamp. There are hundreds of thousands of fish on the reef, so.
The good news is, you'll never believe it. There's fish in the ocean.
I didn't know they could frickin' fly.
I'm not calling Shambo stupid, but it's a bird for crying out loud. I would think you being a country girl would assume that something with wings can fly.
However, as the viewer, we felt bad for her as she was simply trying her best. This plus her sad story about her sister, her overall character, juxtaposing that of Laura Moret, the fact she reclaimed the Leader of Galoo trophy from Russell after his medevac, how she flipped to the far more developed and therefore likeable minority come in merge, I think there's enough boxes to tick. Contrasting that, we have the female villains, and they were probably the strongest archetype from the original Heroes vs. Villains, making decision-making tough. Although we can't have Boston Rob because he was on the original cast, I settled for his wife in Amber. While she was largely forgettable in the Australian outback, her all-star game is the real selling point, where she essentially becomes the Mafasio's girlfriend. She was part of Boston Rob's devious betrayal on Lex, and not to mention Shian was adamant she was the mastermind in the game, which could have had its prophecy fulfilled in this season. Amber has a lot of Sandra upside, and could genuinely win this season, as being an older school winner that's under the radar, but makes it to the end yet again. After this, I had to add Twyla, the runner-up of Vanuatu. She had awful jury management, resulting in various individuals being better at her, coupled with the fact she swore on practically everything and everyone, including her son, when trying to make promises.
First of all, I want to start out, if you don't mind, by apologizing to you and Leanne for swearing on my son's name. I should have never brought him into it. I should have never done that.
And come on, Twyla is going to be the Courtney Yates of this season, who undoubtedly will be calling out fellow cast members and attacking them in her confessionals. Unlike the other individuals that were seen as heroic due to them being the last standing on their tribe, this one was quite the opposite, and we have PG. Firstly, we have to address the iconic challenge throw that, in combination of hilarity through her comments.
PG, you good at puzzles?
I'm good at Sudoku.
An impressive strategy for the time, managed to eliminate Aaron, the leader of the opposing tribe. We then also have her telling straight to Aaron and James's face they were their targets, and overall was a very strong strategic force in her season, which lends itself to being a villainous nature. Plus, challenge throws are generally seen as villainous acts. Next up on this list is someone, again, I'm surprised hasn't seen a return, and that's Natalie Bolton. Now, I will admit she is greatly helped by the fact the big Micronesia 3 of Parvati, Amanda, and Cirie aren't on the cast, as this can solely give her credit for the biggest move of the season in taking away Eric's immunity necklace. And while largely untrue, I think Survivor can construct a narrative surrounding Eric giving up his immunity necklace to Natalie, only for her to vote him out and backstabbing him while being the mastermind of his elimination.
I want to give individual immunity to Natalie.
But she was also a part of the villainous all-female Black Widow Brigade that booted men like nobody's business. Plus, she played into being the villain so well in Micronesia, and in a season where she is expected to be a villain, I can see her further developing this persona. The final female villain comes from Gabon in Corinne. She was loud, rude, had completely no filter and openly stated how she felt about others without a care that the game was, at its core, social-based. I don't think a final tribal speech has fully exemplified one individual's persona as much as Corinne. And let's just look at that glorious bit of poetry directed at Sugar, shall we?
Sugar, you are an unemployed, uneducated leech on society. And the only thing I would vote to give you is a handful of antidepressants so that no one else has to be subjected to your constant crying anymore. And maybe if you got some, then it would seem a little more sincere when you are crying about your dead father. You don't deserve the million.
I mean, when the jury are making blown away faces at a speech, not even including them, you know it's villainous. Finally are the hero meals, which again were hard to cast because Survivor probably got the 5 most iconic meals to return on their original season, but I think my rendition still holds up well. First we have Sean Rector, an absolute icon in Marquesas, who was hilarious and called out things on the island that us as the viewer were screaming at our screens.
You're offering 7 starving adults a piece of candy out of your mouth. Keep your mint candy, man. You know, that's like saying, anybody wanted this piece of doodoo?
Like, Nalia, you don't offer adults a piece of chew candy, girl. We also have him and V being massive underdogs in season 4 and had a very beautiful relationship with narratives that were very progressive for the time. Much like Amber with Rob, if we can't have Tom on the Heroes tribe, we might as well take Ian, who yet again is another one of these individuals the fans want back, but they haven't returned. Ian is remembered for 2 things in Palau. Firstly, his dominance alongside Tom that allowed him to be in such a commanding position, but also, and perhaps most iconic, is him giving in to the immunity challenge. This is seen as a combination of Ian being heroic and giving up his game and getting voted out to preserve his friendship with Tom, mixed with him being very emotional, but both are signs of a hero.
Ian would have my friendship after this game anyway, but he wins my respect back.
Now, the only issue is we do have another male hero that gave up something later on in the list, but Ian was such a strong player on Palau with a standout moment that is even discussed in modern day. I couldn't ignore him. Now, this individual taking the 3rd hero spot is perhaps the most controversial casting pick on my cast due to the fact they did have villainous moments and directly opposed the Golden Boy figure, but I feel like his storyline is good enough to warrant a return, and that's Terry Dietz. Now, I know Terry did act like a spoiled child while arguing with people in Panama.
Somebody call a ambulance! Terry's crying on the course!
But he has all the makings of a strong hero. Firstly, he won 5 individual immunities, which, while being in the minority, is a heroic feat and allows a strong counter to Ozzy on the other tribe, who is also a challenge beast. Secondly, we also have to look at Danielle, who represented Panama on the original Heroes vs. Villains season and was picked to be a villain because she was saved by Terry at the final 4, only to vote him out at the final 3. So I don't see why it isn't fair to have an inverse reasoning for Terry, where he saved Danielle only to be betrayed by her at the end. Plus, unlike Tom, who was evidently less physical than in Palau, Terry showed he still had it in Cambodia. And bear in mind, this is an extra 5 years beyond my dream casting of Heroes vs. Villains. Just the season after, I decided to pick the winner of Cook Islands in Yul Kwon. Yul is the epitome of a hero who fought for Asian representation on television, and in the game, he also had admirable acts, such as gifting Penner his hat and voting Penner out over Adam and Parvati, a move that won him the game.
And I want to make sure I'm clear on this. You said to Yul that if you get rid of Jonathan before me or Parvati, that I'll give you my votes in the end?
Exactly. And if not, I would have voted for Ozzy. So.
And did you keep your word?
Yep.
He was also part of the minority 4 coming into the merge, but unlike Ozzy, his play to flip Penner with the idol and get the numbers was seen as a massive positive. Plus, with Yul on the cast, it means I fulfilled my own personal criteria of having a winner from each archetype. It'll also be fun to see his dynamic with Ozzy, now that they're on opposite tribes. The final hero on this cast is the 4th pick from Micronesia, And we have to have Eric Reichenbach. He was a massive, lovable fan of the game with a moment that makes for many people's top 10 Survivor moments, and that he gave away his immunity necklace, expecting to save Natalie, but instead got unanimously eliminated.
13th person voted out and the 6th member of our jury, Eric. That's 3, that's enough. You need to bring me your torch.
You guys drive me crazy.
I also want to note that this is the only tribal where we've seen everyone's votes and voting confessionals. But seeing how he had such a strong, unique legacy at the time, I couldn't ignore adding Eric. He has such a good making for a redemption arc. But that's the end of the video. Here listed is my entire dream cast. Let me know what you thought. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, and let me know in the comments below what cast you would have made. After this video, make sure to check out others on the channel, and if you enjoy the content I make, please make sure to drop a sub. Anyway, have a great day, and peace!